Welcome, Meteor fans, to the, what is it, November, almost December, November Meteor Club Q&A. I have a special guest with me today. Welcome to the show, Pete.
Hey, Josh.
Hey. So if you're not familiar, that's Pete Corey. He is a Meteor security specialist extraordinaire, right?
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, so I guess, I found it interesting. We were at Space Camp together, and I had no idea, but you have a background in kind of doing security stuff. Is that true?
Yeah, a little bit. My first job actually was as an intern penetration tester, or they called me a white hat hacker. And so basically, I would run automated security scans on all these web applications and verify the results. Do actual proof of concept exploits, things like that, and then explain how the exploits work and how you would fix them and avoid them in the future.
Nice. Yeah, that's kind of awesome because most people don't realize either that I think maybe you're the most famous Meteor hacker. I don't know. You did hack Galaxy. You figured out that we were able to find that list of
Yeah, the
allowed.
beta list. I don't know if
Yeah,
it's hacking is like a generous term for that. I just opened up a
Splunking.
console and
Yeah,
got some info.
yeah, it's kind of funny. All right. So it looks like we've got some questions lined up, but if you are watching live, feel free to submit or vote on questions. We're going to try to go through the list as they're voted on. I'm also keeping an eye on chat too. But if you go to the questions and topics tab in Crowdcast, you'll see the questions there, and you can ask a question, and we'll try to. I think 9 we could probably get through for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
But if you have some more, feel free to toss those in as well. Just keep in mind, I think this time we're having an eye on security as the topics. So if you have questions around media and security, now's the time. All right. So first up, we have Madhan Sundaram. I probably butchered that terribly, but he had a question. So there we go. You can see his name there on the screen. So since we're talking about security, can you talk about data in motion and data at rest? I guess, HTTPS versus encryption, considerations for server to DB transportation security over different PaaS and SaaS services. PaaS
Sure.
and SaaS.
Yeah. So I mean, as far as data in motion goes, you should always use SSL, HTTPS. If your app has any kind of secret at all, and that includes, user passwords, any kind of sensitive anything, you should be using HTTPS. And the main reasoning for that is because TTP, the main protocol that Meteor uses, is just a clear text protocol. There's no inherent encryption or anything in that. So if anyone is between your browser and your server, they're going to be able to see whatever you pass back and forth, unless it's encrypted with HTTPS.
Right. And I think, that's important too, because you can install the Force SSL package, and that'll force all the DDP to go over a secure WebSocket instead, which
If
is
you have HTTP set up or HTTPS set up on your server.
yeah, exactly. And it's relatively easy to do if you're on like Modulus or something like that. You just have to upload your security cert, and you should be able to get it going on quite a few platforms as a service. Same thing with Heroku. I have no idea on Galaxy. I'm assuming that's probably pretty easy too.
I guess we'll find out soon.
Yeah, maybe.
But yeah, and I mean, it's probably going to get even easier with the new Let's Encrypt thing that just came out. They're going to make like free automated certs available to everyone, supposedly.
Yeah.
So in the future, there should be no reason to not encrypt your apps.
Right. No one wants to be a fire sheep. Yeah. So what about encryption? Have you done any actual data encryption with your Meteor apps at all?
So Meteor apps, I haven't really had a reason to do data at rest encryption yet. In the past, I worked on a like a medical app, so they had to be HIPAA compliant,
Mm.
which meant that we had to do some like in-database encryption. There are reasons to do that. Being required by law is definitely one, but there are also a lot of huge drawbacks. Once your data is encrypted in your database, you can't really search on it. You can't query on it very easily. It really is just truly like a black box chunk of data.
Yeah.
I know there are Meteor packages out there that make that kind of like in-database encryption really easy and kind of seamless.
Yeah.
It's like just a hook around your collection. But unless you have a serious security need to do that, I would heavily weigh the cons of that as well.
Yeah. And there's a package called Mylar. That's the one I know of, and I think it's been like forked and updated, but it came out of MIT, and that should help encrypt the Mongo data. And there's other options as well. Like if you're just worried about, so I talked to, gosh, I wish I had that email up now, but I talked to Lauren Shaw. I forget his last name.
The Parlay guy?
Yeah, the Parlay guy. And he talked about the fact that it shouldn't be very easy to sniff traffic over the wire, like Mongo traffic over the wire. Because one thing people forget about is the fact that a lot of the Mongo services that you can purchase or set up don't have SSL enabled. Yeah. And so that's also going over in clear text.
You can enable SSL between your server and your database.
Mm-hmm. You can, but most of the commercial hosting solutions don't do it, or at least not at a cheap level. Like I know you can do Compose, you can turn on SSL, but you have to have one of their dedicated servers to do it.
Yeah.
So that's like $200 a month.
There's also the option of, like if you're on AWS, you can have two separate EC2 instances, one with your Mongo, one with your app, and you can do like an internal intranet connection between them. Exactly. So it wouldn't actually expose any of that traffic to the internet at large, just those private boxes.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I think most hosting providers have options like that.
That's all still kind of like data in motion. Just always use SSL everywhere and you'll be fine.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Yeah, I'd say we got that one answered. So we had another one jump to the top, also from Madhan. Is it good practice to write Meteor methods, which are common to both the server and client? It seems like you could easily find out all the server methods, and securely written method calls can be used to compromise the server. I don't know. I guess to me, it would depend on your need. I tend to like to write my methods in a place that will go to both the server and the client so that I'll get the stub kind of for free. But if you are worried about security, it would be very easy to, write a client stub and have a separate server method, and the code doesn't live together. And I think that would be an easy way to kind of handle that.
I think there are a few things to consider there. I mean, first of all, like I usually write my methods in a shared location just to get that, optimistic UI goodness going. But the one thing you should be doing, obviously, is not storing application secrets in methods. So like if you have an API key or something, don't hard code that into your application. That should go into your Meteor settings, and then your method should reference that settings key or that settings object.
Yeah.
So in that case, if someone looks at the method source, which is easily visible on any client, they won't see your keys or your secrets. They'll just see like a reference to it, which they can't do anything with.
Yeah.
In my mind, the only real reason to hide method bodies is if there's some kind of like business secret in it. So if you're doing some specific logic to your business that you have some value, or you see some value in that you don't want other people in your same industry to see for some reason, you could always separate out your client and your server methods.
Yeah. And I think the important distinction here, he says insecurely written methods can be used to compromise the server.
You should never have insecurely written methods.
Right. I think maybe the key point here is that you should rarely trust your user input Basically, your default mode should be like people are trying to hack the crap out of you, and
Yeah.
you should not trust anything they're inputting, and double check it and make sure it's what you're expecting it to be. You know,
For
by
sure.
running checks and looking at all their different kind of inputs. I know you've written a lot on Mongo modifiers and that kind of stuff as well on your blog.
Definitely, yeah. And I mean, it's also important to realize that even if you intend a method to only be called by your server code, it can be called by anyone.
Yeah.
Even if it's in like a server-only location, and so the client can't see the definition.
Mm-hmm.
If a client can see a call to it, they'll know it exists, and they can call it themselves with whatever arguments they want.
Right.
So just always be aware that every method you write is going to be callable by any user.
Yeah.
So always validate your input. Always check everything. Always make sure that you're doing the right thing there. Never trust user inputs.
Never trust user inputs.
Never trust.
We should make T-shirts that just say "Never trust." All right. So Niall O'Brien, I hope I said that right. I know I've screwed it up before. Asked, I personally think Meteor should dispose of allow deny rules for security purposes and instead rely on Meteor methods out of the box. What's your opinion on this?
There's a lot of drama about collection validators, isn't there?
Drama llama, yeah.
Drama llama. I mean, I see the uses of them. Like the whole Meteor philosophy is database everywhere. You want to be able to let people do direct updates to the database from the client. And to do that, you need some form of allow deny rules. They are definitely hard to reason about, mostly almost entirely because Mongo modifiers are hard to reason about.
Right.
I tend to use collection validators from a high-level permission standpoint. So when I have a collection validator, it usually only checks the current user's roles to see if they have like a course permission to do this update on this collection. And then if I need to do any more like fine-tuned permission checks, I usually throw that into a method.
Mm-hmm. Well, did you see the new MDG method package by chance? It's called MDG:method.
Oh no.
So they just released a new package. I think it's just kind of like an experiment that they're playing around with, but it changes how you write methods a little bit, but it's got validators that you can put in, and they'll throw Meteor errors that get passed along to the front end correctly. So in particular, they wrote it with an eye on like form validation and that kind of stuff.
Nice.
Yeah. So I thought that was really interesting.
But I mean, yeah, I think collection validators have their place for sure. It can be easier so sometimes they're also difficult because the differentiation between an allow method and a deny method is sometimes hard to remember or easy to forget. If you use only denies, it can be a little easier. There are some packages like OngoWorks security that makes it a little bit easier to like reason about what your collection validators are doing. You can just like string together almost BDD style lines of code that basically let you define permissions on collections.
Yeah. And I think the key thing here is that to understand that, the allow deny stuff is actually just, you're still using Meteor methods. They've just written some predefined methods for insert and destroy and that kind of stuff. And then they pull in the allow deny and kind of apply those as you're doing the method. So in reality, you're still using a Meteor method. It's just a little nicety that they created. But I agree. Like, for me, I kind of side with Sasha after he did his whole security challenge, and it's like I think 50 people tried to do it and like 2 got it right. Yeah. So I don't know.
It's actually kind of interesting. If you open up a Meteor app and you like go to a browser console, you can type in meteor.connection._method handlers, and you'll see all of the methods available on that client. And you'll actually see all of your collection insert updates and removes in there. So they are methods. You can call them as methods. You're right, though. The allow deny stuff is just like syntactic sugar for you.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. That's interesting. I did not know about that. but I would expect Pete the hacker to know. All right. So let's take the next one. I'd like to hear some, this is from David Norman. I'd like to hear some discussion around launching an app that is multi-tenant with data firewalled between customers. Can it be done in a single web install and database cluster? Does each customer really need their own Meteor instance, but can share a Mongo cluster and so on? Is oplog the only thing to worry about leaking data? What are some checklist items to examine in Q&A and set up in configuration management?
So that's, I mean, it depends, I guess, what you mean by multi-tenant and how multi-tenant you want to get.
Right.
If you just mean like a few different users, you're going to be fine with one instance, one database, and just, separating things by IDs.
Right.
If you have business uses that go beyond that, like, multiple different businesses using a single web app and all of their data has to be completely private, things get a lot more complicated.
Yeah, I would probably suggest, if it's the latter, I'd say look at kind of doing self-sharded Mongo data, right? Similar to what Aaron Otis talked about in regards to Kadira. For scaling and performance reasons, you could easily use for security purposes as well.
Exactly. But you could still do that as a single database instance and a single app. Your oplog shouldn't leak any data since only the server has access to your oplog.
Yeah, technically, if a server can hit your oplog, like, you're probably screwed anyway, right?
Yeah, exactly.
All that data is flowing out, but they've somehow figured out how to get admin access to your Mongo database. So
yeah,
I wouldn't count on that really being a leak point.
I would say these kind of considerations honestly are more of a performance consideration. If you're going to have like some good size separate users or separate clients using this thing, you may want to shard those out for performance reasons.
Yeah, you wouldn't even need to do this for HIPAA compliance, would you? This would even be further than probably what HIPAA would care about even.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I don't know. I think it really depends on what your use case is, because multi-tenant can mean a lot of different things.
Yeah.
In a lot of different areas of web development.
Yeah, it's definitely kind of a gray term. Yeah, we had a question there. So David, I think he's watching. So
cool.
If we get to this part, feel free to leave a comment and we can kind of come back to it. But he's curious what our response is to people that say we don't need to encrypt between the web and the database instances because they're all in the same data center AWS region. So I really, actually, why don't you take this and I will try to find that email from Lauren. Okay. Because he used to work for the CIA or something.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So, this is kind of a throwback to what we mentioned earlier. You can set up AWS EC2 instances that communicate through an intranet rather than the internet. So any communication between them would, in theory, be private. I think whether or not you need to encrypt that kind of communication depends on your level of trust of Amazon. You're kind of trusting your data to whether or not that actually is internal communication and whether or not you actually trust the people working at Amazon to not sniff your data. In theory, it should never be accessible outside of that intranet, but theory breaks down sometimes in real life, and sometimes people within that intranet may not be the most trustworthy. So at the end of the day, if you're really paranoid and you really want to keep your data secure, throw some SSL on there. It's not that difficult. It solves all your problems. But for the most part, I think, the intranet communication between EC2 instances or some other type of infrastructure like that is going to be secure. It's going to be fine to not encrypt in most cases. It really comes down to, what your level of trust is. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't find it now, but gosh, I really wish I could. Great explanation in it. But yeah, basically it just comes down to I think it's going to be hard for most people to sniff your traffic. So, yeah. Is it a huge issue?
Everything kind of comes down to where you're willing to draw the line, because everything is just a chain of trust all the way up. SSL certificates, you're trusting people that they're actually secure and signed correctly.
Yeah.
all the way up the stack.
Yeah, I feel like recently. Oh, I remember. I was on the forums and I posted about today what we were going to be talking about and stuff. And to me, security is more like risk mitigation to some degree. You know, it's like hiring a good lawyer. You hire the lawyer because you don't want to you want to make sure if you do get sued, like you limit your exposure or how much you might be liable for, that kind of thing. And I think time spent on security is a similar thing, right? Like you're never going to be good enough to thwart every attack. Like if someone really, really wants to hack you and they're smart enough, they'll figure out a way to do it.
Yeah, and there are some crazy smart people out there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like to me, DRM on Blu-rays and that kind of crap. Like this stuff's hacked within weeks, and like it's built into hardware. And like, what's the point? Like, just stop. I don't know. You're not gonna stop pirates with that crap.
It's like testing too, though. Like you can't prove that there are no bugs. You can only prove that the things you've tested are bug-free.
Right.
But who knows what else is out there?
Yeah, totally. All right. Oh, we got some more comments. So let's see if any of those relate. Oh, okay. So when he was asking about multi-tenant, he was interested in the latter part of the question, more complex issues of big customers having their data separated.
Gotcha. I mean, it depends. I mean, if your application is correct, in theory, they could share a single app instance and a single database instance, and there would be no leakage ever.
Right.
The big contingency there is your app correct? Like, are there no flaws or security issues there?
Yeah, I feel like this is maybe slightly more of an enterprise concern, and I would tweak my sales cycle towards that and just say, you know, like there's a couple hours of work we have to do when you sign up to get you going. And you could probably even automate it with something like Docker and other kind of scripts. But I would just launch separate Mongo instances at that point. And you can still have one master kind of database and then one app instance, or as many app instances as you want, but they just look up kind of like a key to get into the other Mongo database where their user data is stored. And I think that would solve a lot of things.
Yeah, I do too. Depending on how you onboard clients, you can easily just spin up a new instance for them.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, you get the sharding and performance kind of gains there as well. I guess not true Mongo sharding, but yeah, it looks like Rishi chimed in as well and kind of said the same thing.
And I mean, you can even, well, no, never mind. Yeah, that's what I would do.
Yeah. All right. So we've got another question from Mahan. Is there a way to expose only certain methods to the client and keep other methods for interacting with a trusted service? For example, a microservice via DDP. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say not really, not in the truest sense of your question. You can't really expose only certain methods to the client. I think one thing you can do,
you can check, I think it's this dot connection or something like that, this dot connection dot something. If that's null, it's a server originated call.
Yeah, or you could add something like a key that's only an environment variable key that you set that the server passes along when it runs a method. I mean, there's a couple different things you could do, but there's nothing like natively in a Meteor method that kind of would allow that, I think.
Yeah. The issue is that, like I was saying earlier, even methods defined in a server-only location are callable by anyone.
Yeah. So maybe your best bet is to move it into a separate repo and a separate DDP connection, and it wouldn't be as obvious. Like you couldn't just call Meteor dot, what was it you were saying before? Meteor dot underscore connection or something.
Yeah. Dot connection dot underscore method handlers.
Yeah. So like that wouldn't be readily available in there if it were like in a different repo on a different DDP kind of setup. Your method wouldn't show up in there, but you would still do like a DDP.connect and put in some info, and then like if you make that available as a global or something, then they could look it up there. I don't know. I mean, to me, that's like security through obscurity. Like it's really not security at that point. I would spend more time focusing on making sure your methods are as secure as you can make them.
You should look into the this dot connection. If this dot connection is null in your method, that means that it came from the server. There is no active client.
Yeah.
That might be good enough for your use cases. It's kind of a really niche case. Like if you have like a set timeout on your server that calls a method, this dot connection will be null. Or if you have like a REST endpoint that gets hit.
But you could just as easily set up like an event listener and just fire an event, and then it's all handled server side, and you don't have to expose a method, right?
Yeah. I mean, it really depends on what you want to do. There's probably not a reason for a method if you want just a private server-only method. You can just make it a function and call it in however way you want.
Yeah. Definitely. All right. It's the easier one. Okay. I love this. So Wade asks, if I'm confident that I've secured my publications, my methods, and my allow and deny rules, is there anything I'm missing to make sure my app is secure? So I would just say, like, you should just like throw all your confidence out the window. And you should go back over it again with a fine-tooth comb, and then again, and then again. I don't like, I would never, ever feel confident that I got all that right. But what other things should you be concerned about, I think is what he's really getting at, besides those things?
So, I mean, you've got your methods, you've got your pub subs, you've got your collection validators. Those are all secure, or as secure as you think they can be. Mm-hmm. You've also got the entire notion of isomorphisms, like we were talking about. Can the client see things they shouldn't be seeing from a business perspective? You also have the threat of cross-site scripting. Are you using browser policy to prevent that? Mm-hmm. Are you sanitizing user input properly? Are you rendering user input properly? Are you sure your methods are secure? Are you sure your pub subs are secure? Honestly, the attack vectors for Meteor app are fairly small. You've got your methods, pub subs, and collection validators for the back end, and then any potential XSS things that can go wrong on the front end. Yeah.
And I just, for those that aren't in the live chat, I just posted a link to the Meteor Club security checklist. And it was basically just a bunch of stuff that mostly Pete and I wrote. I think I should update these links. David Weldon wrote one of the other articles too. So it's kind of 3 contributors there, but it's just a checklist of things you should worry about. And I ran this by Emily, who used to kind of be in charge of security at MDG, and she said it was a pretty thorough and complete list. The only thing she would suggest is we should have put something on here about SSL, but there was no good blog post about it at the time.
Yeah.
But I popped one out there after this was launched. Let's see.
And I mean, also be careful, like as you're adding functionality to your app or refactoring things, I find that a lot of times you kind of get lax on the security as you do that kind of like, evolutionary cycle, and things will slip through. You'll open up a little crack and it's just enough for someone to get in. So always be on the lookout for potential holes.
Yeah, definitely. Trying to, here we go. There we go. So there's a URL for you guys. I'll leave it up there for a second. But if you want to see the security checklist, just type that in, and maybe I can put it on the YouTube comment area too after this goes up. But yeah, I mean, there's a few simple things you should do, like turning off user.profile updates. Probably don't want that. Stuff like that. All right. So how do I get back to Crowdcast? There we go. Too many things to manage. All right. So another one from Wade. if I'm storing an API key in the Mongo database, boo, don't do that. How can I make sure it doesn't get sent in plain text over the wire for security purposes? So I think we covered this a little bit. You can turn on SSL between the server and the database, which would help some here. But in reality, all your API keys should really be environment variable settings. And there's a couple reasons for that, in my opinion. One of them being, obviously, like if your environment is compromised, and that means like they've hacked your server and, well, you're screwed anyway. Like they're going to get in your database. But and then number two is, in reality, you probably want to develop against a different key in development or staging or production. So if you think in terms of like Stripe, when I'm in development mode, I want to use like a test key that's not going to actually charge my cards. Same thing in staging, I want to use a test key. But then in production, you want to use an actual like live production key that's actually going to collect the money for you. And so I think that's another strong reason to really move that to the environment, because then you can kind of change it based on where you're running the code.
I wonder if he has some weird use case where he's like storing other users' keys for some other application for some reason. I don't know. That's the only reason I can think of to ever store a key in a database.
Right. So I've written a number of Twitter apps, and that was kind of a concern, but I never really addressed it personally. I don't know.
If it's for your app, I would store all the keys in your Meteor settings.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. And that's when, so that's when the data at rest comes into play, right? Like you can encrypt it in the database if you're really concerned about that, and then decrypt it on the client. And then that's much less of a concern for you.
Yeah.
So you could look at something like Mylar, if it's truly concerned. But I don't know. It feels like diminishing returns to me.
And you're probably, if you're storing user keys for something, it's probably going to be their public key if it's like a public-private scheme.
Yeah.
So it's not that big of a deal. It really depends.
Yeah. We need more info, Wade. Oh, there's 2 comments. Oh, yeah. Okay. Just asking him to clarify. All right. Yeah, Jeff asked a question in the comments. Hey, Jeff, if you could just put that in the questions in the actual Q&A portion, and we'll get to it. Okay, so Anthony has a question. I went through the getting started guide, but at the very end it says, do not do this in production. No, stay away. No. I would like to know exactly how a production app should be set up. So,
what guide is that?
Yeah, I'm assuming he's talking about the tutorial guide, maybe. Meteor, yes, tutorial. My guess is the tutorial maybe doesn't cover security. No, it covers security with methods, publish and subscribe. Do they maybe? They don't cover check for sure, which is terrible.
Check is the heart and soul of Meteor security.
It is. It really is. Stop trusting your user input. Same thing, like pub sub stuff is all like don't trust your user input either.
Yeah, definitely. Anthony, if you're here, I would love to know what guide that is.
Yes, definitely. If you can add that here. To-dos. Yeah, I'm not seeing it anywhere that's super spelled out.
But as for setting up a production app, from a security perspective,
yeah,
you should definitely check out Josh's checklist. It goes over a lot of things you should be concerned about. When you're writing methods and publications, always check your user input using the check function, little check API.
Yeah,
That comes with Meteor.
I would say probably the single biggest offense that I always see is people leave insecure and or auto publish in place. And
Yeah, that's
like,
probably what he's talking about, actually.
yeah, I'm wondering. I mean, but they go into publish and subscribe. That's what just like with insecure in the last step, all new Meteor apps should start with auto publish package. Let's remove it and see what happens. And then it walks through setting up your own pub sub.
Hmm.
I don't know. Maybe it was a different tutorial. But yeah, I definitely think those are probably the two biggest offenses. And I've lobbied several times to have those either be marked as debug only or removed from the default application. I just don't like. I feel like it's okay for maybe your first couple hours with Meteor.
Yeah.
To have auto publish there and insecure and that kind of stuff. But in reality, I think if you think about how people code, write code, at the time they're writing that particular code, they have pretty much the highest amount of knowledge that they're ever going to have about that chunk of code. And so I want to think about security when I have that highest amount of knowledge right then.
Definitely.
And I think if you leave auto publish and insecure in there, then when you take it out, you're going to be coming back when you have less readily available knowledge in your head about that code that you wrote. And my guess is if you left auto publish and insecure in there, you're probably not writing tests either, which would be the other thing that I think could help you maybe have a little bit higher knowledge about your code when you come back to it. But that's, likely not the case in that scenario either. So.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know about you, but like my first step with a new Meteor app is to remove auto publish and insecure immediately.
Yeah. Or go find a boilerplate and all of them are going to have it removed as well. So, yeah.
But yeah, remove auto publish, remove insecure, check all your user inputs, go ahead and add browser policy right away.
Yeah. I still haven't turned on browser policy for Crater. Well, I turned it on for like 20 minutes and like everyone's like, oh my God, I'm getting all these console errors and it won't pull up and all this other stuff. And it turned out like, yeah, it's probably better to start before you deploy and have users on your system.
Definitely. There's some tweaking for sure required with browser policy.
Yeah. Its defaults are not probably set quite right for most apps.
Yeah.
So, all right. So this will be a quick one because we're not really going to cover it. But Anthony asked again, I would like to see an example of isomorphic JavaScript with Meteor. I want to build an app where the web version is isomorphic so it will get indexed by search engines. So I think maybe this is not an understanding of what isomorphic means with Meteor. To me, you're really talking about server-side rendering, which is not something that you can easily do with Meteor right now. They definitely don't have any support for that. But you can install packages like Spiderable and get that, or you could switch to something like Flow Router with their SSR branch and use React and kind of get all that kind of SSR goodness in there. But to me, the isomorphic stuff really relates to like writing collections or writing methods. Like you can write it once in one spot and it'll be delivered to both environments, server and client, and then you get to like reuse that code.
Yeah.
And that's what isomorphic means in regards to Meteor. Yeah, I think that
Sasha have a really good article about how he writes his methods. Like he does tiered methods or something like that. Like he has a client method and like a server only method. Maybe I'm.
No, I think you're right. Discover Meteor method.
He's got like a whole series on it, I think. That'd be a good maybe introduction to the ideas of like isomorphic JavaScript.
Two-tiered methods, yeah, totally. So we'll try to use that lower thirds thing again. Let's see if that'll work. Hangout, pop that in, turn that on. There you go. So discovermeteor.com Meteor dash pattern dash 2 dash tier dash methods. That was long. But yeah, that's kind of a good walkthrough, and it's a 2-parter, so definitely check that out.
There's also, didn't Google announce really recently that they're going to be supporting JS-only websites in their crawler?
They did, yes.
Something like that. So maybe
yeah.
Spiderable is a thing of the past, hopefully.
It's still not, unfortunately. You still have like the social crawlers that you have to care about, and they want their metadata up top. But I mean, it's definitely. So I'll say this. I should really write this article, but I've got a screenshot that shows Google still coming along. This was as of like a month ago, days after that announcement. They still hit my site and sent like 40 bots to consume Crater and took down the site. So I mean, I've moved to doing rendering with pre-render and using Nginx to kind of cache those responses for a couple hours.
Nice.
So I mean, that's not a huge concern anymore. But that's interesting. So I'll mention this because we're talking about security. You could potentially have problems when you do caching and you use something like fast render, which is another way to kind of achieve a little bit of I guess SSR, right? Because you're shipping the data, the pub/sub data, in the header of the site, and it'll be instantiated right away, and then your pub/sub will still connect and pull over any new data. But if you cache that somehow and serve that up to another user, and the fast render data should be different, then you've created a potential security hole there.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. I've seen that happen before.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's not a good one.
No, that would be bad. All right. So Jeff added his question here. Do you recommend Eodium, I don't know how you say that, Easy Security for helping with rate limiting? Yeah, I don't know. We haven't covered this yet.
Yeah. So I haven't used this package in particular, but there is an officially supported core rate limiter now. I've never even heard of this package actually.
Yeah, neither have I. So, and then there's another one called Sika, which is written by Aaronoda as well.
Sika is awesome because the official package is kind of a minimalistic approach. Like it will just throw exceptions, I think, once you exceed your rate.
Yeah.
Sika will actually redirect you to a little page that prompts if you're a human or not, and if you are, it will let you continue abusing the site.
Yeah. Does Sika have like a hard limit though? Can you set a hard limit, or like once they whitelist, can they just keep abusing you?
I don't know. Like once you confirm you're human, I don't know if you can.
It's basically just a CAPTCHA page.
Yeah.
That they throw up, but yeah.
It looks like.
I guess you could use the two in tandem, huh? You could probably like put a much higher hard limit in the rate limiter.
Yeah, for sure. It looks like this Meteor Easy Security package is depreciated. You can check out the hub right here.
Yeah. So the main package I think is just called rate limiter.
Yeah. DDP rate limiter.
Yeah.
Like that. It's pretty easy to use.
Yeah, it's similar to Loudonize. Like you just write rules, and I think you don't even have to like attach it directly to the method. You can just say like rate limit this method using like this code here. And they give you an example of rate limiting a method, but you can also use it for publications and subscriptions, or I guess publications.
Pretty nice.
Yeah.
And that's very needed because, I mean, you can DOS Meteor apps pretty easily.
No, you can't. You can't do that.
No, not at all. Not Crater.
We're not going to talk about that. Damn it. Now I got to go do something about that. All right. So guess who's back? Mahana is back. Oh, it didn't pop on my screen. In relation to the question I asked earlier, oh, there it went. Wow, that's way delayed. On having Meteor methods only available to trusted servers, can server-side routing help here like you would do for REST APIs?
Well, so I mean, again, if it's a server-side route, like an iron router server route, you're not going to have a connected user, so you can depend on that this.connection being null.
Yeah.
But again, there's no real benefit of using a Meteor method there. You could just write a function and have that function called from your REST endpoint.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you're exposing a server-side route or a REST endpoint, basically,
Maybe he's trying to expose like a DDP service, and he wants like methods available through that DDP service only. I don't know.
Yeah, I still don't, I'm not sure I see a precise use case here, or it's like really precise and just not something I'm thinking of. But I mean, exposing a method through DDP or exposing it through a server-side route, they're kind of the same thing. And I think you're right. Like you lose the nicety of having this connection there.
Yeah.
So you can tell like who the user is and all that kind of stuff. So.
Yeah, it depends. If you, it depends on what you want to do.
Oh, did you? I just opened the chat window and Rishi had said, check out DDP rate limiter package.
There you go.
And it only shows 82 installs.
Oh my God.
Whoops.
Yeah.
So the thing I'll say is like it came out with 1.2. I don't even think it got mentioned in the change logs in 1.2.
Did it not?
No. I'm pretty sure like I went back through there and it took me a while to find it again because I'm like, wait a minute, didn't the rate limiter come out? And like I think it was in the early part of 1.2 development, and then like that branch hung around for so long. It didn't really.
I was playing with the new build package API or the new build plugin API, like the linters and minifiers and stuff.
Yeah.
I rewrote checker as a linter, and the docs were impossible to find. Like it was mentioned once in the change logs. I found an example linter in the code, and like in the source, the Meteor source. And then that was all I found when I was doing the rewrite. And then later on, I was writing a blog post about it, and I found a wiki page buried deep in the Meteor wiki about it. But it seems like a lot of those 1.2 new features aren't very well documented, which isn't the best thing.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure this was only only documented in the blog, perhaps. I think they released a blog post about rate limiting and that it was coming in 1.2, but then it was never really mentioned anywhere else. And I don't even think it gets mentioned in the docs either, which seems like an oversight. But again, like, I don't know, I'm hesitant to submit anything to MDG because they don't really accept it very often through pull requests. And then also, like, I don't really understand what they're looking for in the docs. And Sashko's said stuff about how he wants to redo it all. So it's like, is it worth my time to write that? I don't know. So
yeah, I would, if I remember right, there was like a potential issue in Sika of being able to like spoof a header and get around it, but I don't know if that's been fixed or not.
Yeah.
I would use the core rate limiter if I were you, just because it's a core package and probably
hopefully
has
maintained.
a little more maintenance going towards it. Or does a good job, but I mean, MDG is paid to maintain their packages.
Yes, this is true. Sort of paid by investors. I don't know. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. So definitely look into that. Yeah. So we answered that one. So Anthony's got a more general Meteor question, but I'll be curious to hear your take too, Pete. So are there any patterns for building microservice architecture with Meteor? It still seems like a monolithic framework solution.
I want to hear you take this one. You wrote that sweet little Apple TV streamer thing, right?
I did. And then, so you know what happened with that when we were at Space Camp? Apparently, like Yiffy and the Popcorn Time people, like it all got taken down, and So it's like slowly coming back up, but I honestly haven't used it since then. But so what I did is you can break apart an application almost however you want, really. So there were different components to it. One component would go out and find information about available legal TV shows that you could stream, right? And it would that was one microservice, and you could make a Meteor call to it like every 10 minutes if you wanted a method call, and it would go out and fetch that data and update the database and add any new stuff, update any old stuff, et cetera, et cetera. Cool. And so then, I kind of have like one main application, and all the TV show data lived in one spot. Any kind of like movie data lived in another spot, and that microservice would handle, dealing with that information. And then I had another one that would go out and scan the network for Apple TVs. And it would handle, scanning the network, finding them, and then, the main app could query against that data, and you could pick an Apple TV you wanted to stream to. And then I had another one that was there to handle actually downloading and making a video stream available, again, all legal. And I would just I would make the different method calls just depending on what I needed to do. And you can make different subscription calls depending on the data you needed as well. So cool. You could subscribe and get the TV data from the one service. So in reality, I had one Meteor app. Well, I guess I had 5 Meteor apps. And you could basically, the main app would then make all these connections through DDP, and then you could subscribe to data, you could make the calls that you need to make, et cetera, and
nice.
Kind of control it all that way. The only downside I think there is to that is just understanding and remembering how those are all, what lives where and how those are connected. So right now it's all kind of hard-coded in, on different ports. In reality, I think if you were going to launch an app or a service on the web around this, you could have those hard-coded to point to domain names, and that would be fine.
So you're using DDP methods and pub subs as your main form of communication between those microservices?
Yeah, exactly. And so I don't really care. So I think the upside for me was that I could work on a piece of the application, and you don't have to worry about a stream necessarily going down unless you were messing with either the Apple TV microservice or the torrent microservice. And as long as those two were up and stable, everything else could continue to function. I could rewrite a TV show finder part of it or whatever. I think that's nice. Kind of interesting.
There's also the option of having one microservice. I'm doing this on a current app I've been working on that just updates some Mongo collection, and then your Meteor app will pick up on that change through oplog or through polling or whatever.
Yeah.
Process it accordingly. Send down the new subscriptions to the client.
Yeah, I've done something similar to that using Mongo aggregations, and so I just have server set timeout calls or set interval calls that run every 10 minutes, and they'll just run the aggregation on the server and push that data into a Mongo collection that's being exposed to the client. And so then they're it's semi real-time data at that point. But we were having performance issues, and so we went that route. But it's very similar.
Did you see there's a new graphic on the Meteor homepage that basically breaks the server into a live query piece, which is Meteor, and then an app microservices layer?
Yeah. We were talking about that yesterday in the Meteor Club.
So it seems like they may be pushing the microservice idea.
Yeah, so I think the thing that's not entirely clear to me is I think you'd have to authenticate with each separate DDP connection there. So, that's not probably quite ideal.
Yeah. It also is interesting to me that there is no like dedicated Meteor server layer. There's live query and DDP, which, I mean, what's controlling those things? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the Meteor node server is technically controlling that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
It's definitely like an evolving pattern. So it's probably not a best practice right now, but we'll see what it is in the near future.
Yeah, you know, I also question, like, I think DDP is very, very powerful, but I also question like how committed Meteor is to it in the long term, because when you look at the package server stuff, I mean, I realize it was probably hastily written when 09 was coming out, but in order to get Atmosphere working, they actually have part of it's done through DDP, but another part's done through REST.
Yeah.
And it seems weird that like that should be like a really good kind of showcase point for them to show off DDP, but it's not. So I don't know. I mean, maybe I mean, Galaxy is definitely their money thing, so maybe it's pretty awesome, but that's not something we can easily see.
Yeah.
Yet. All right. So we got through 12. Nice.
I'm ready for more.
Ready for more? We have time for one more. You guys are slacking on us. So maybe one will show up here in the next 4 minutes. But in the meantime, where can people find out more information about you, Pete?
Yeah, so I do some freelance web development under the name East Fifth. You can find my website at www.eastfifth.co. My blog is blog.eastfifth.co. I try and push something out once a week. You can find me on Twitter at Pete Corey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. I'm
got a couple Meteor security packages you can check out too.
Nice. Yeah. I'm starting a new consultancy called West Fourth. Just kidding.
Oh man, competition.
Nah, no. I also do consulting, but I don't have a fancy website for it anymore. I should fix that. I'm working on it. Yeah. Yeah, so if you're interested, you can hit me up on Twitter or email. Also do the Meteor Club, which obviously you maybe heard of since you found your way here and you're watching this, meteorjs.club. You join the mailing list there and get exciting updates and news and info, blog posts, tips, tricks, all that kind of jazz. And then we've got a chat room as well, Patreon, patreon.com/Meteor Club, $10 a month. Pete's in there, I'm in there, a bunch of other really smart people are in there. So if you have Meteor questions, like that's the place to go. If you have React questions, apparently like we're getting big into the Elixir and Erlang and Phoenix perhaps. So if you got questions about that, you could probably get those answered there. So it's all kinds of awesome knowledge in there. All right. We did get one more, not security related, but Anthony wants to know any news on Rethink DB official support. No news is no news. I haven't heard anything. I hear 2.2 is coming out soon, and that was the thing that Slava said he was waiting on. I don't know, like it's definitely a gray area. I don't know how official it would be anyway. Slava was running the package as part of his Hack Week time, and he's since left. And so I don't know if anyone there would pick that up. Maybe
I mean, there's a lot that they would have to do to add another database officially. There's a lot of stuff that just assumes Mongo syntax and Mongo semantics that would need to be totally abstracted out and rethunk.
Yeah, and it's a worthy effort, and they've started it in regards to Postgres. So Sashko and Slava started on Postgres support, and it's out there. There's a package you can play with if you really want to try it. And I think that maybe in 1.3, 1.4, 2.0, we'll see some changes come along that will make it easier to support other databases. But right now, there's a little too much hard-coded in the user accounts and that kind of stuff.
I've been playing with Rethink though, and it's very cool. I'm definitely excited for any possibility of it being used with Meteor.
Right. And so I think the big claim to fame there is the fact that you can kind of subscribe to updates that are related to the query you want, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so the big performance gain there is that we don't, like right now with Mongo, if you turn on oplog, you have to listen to any and all changes that happen on the Mongo server that you have oplog access to. And, if you're pushing 5,000 writes a second, the reason you turn on oplog support in the first place is to allow you to easily scale out to 10 servers. But if you're pushing 5,000 writes a second and all 10 servers have to consume those 5,000 writes a second, like you get to see your CPU usage spike way high. But if instead we just got the updates for the query we cared about, like that would actually be way more performant. And supposedly Mongo's working on it, but Rethink already has all that stuff there. So.
You can also join data. How crazy is that?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Like it's joined on the server side?
Yeah.
Yeah. On the database side, really.
Yeah.
That's
my biggest gripe with Mongo.
Yeah.
Can't stand it.
Yeah. And he's saying that in the comments, PubSub and joins seem to be the big selling points. And I think, those are the pain points with Mongo right now. So
yeah.
I could see Rethink being a great fit. It just it came along a lot later than Mongo, and that's what everything's kind of built on now. And if anyone's interested, Anthony said he is, you can hit me up on Twitter and we'll find a way to contact him. But if anyone wants to present at the Santa Cruz JavaScript meetup about any of this stuff, like he'd be happy to have someone.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. I think that's it. We got through all the questions. I want to thank you, Pete, for coming on the show. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. It was fun.
Yeah. Awesome. And if anyone does have any more questions, feel free to hit up either of us, twitter.com/Josh Owens or twitter.com/Pete Corey.
Yep.
And we'll be happy to answer those. And like I said, if you get in the Meteor Club Slack chat room, we're both in there and we answer questions all the time. So it's better than Stack Overflow.
It's true.
All right. Well, thanks for tuning in, guys. And next month, I have no idea who we're going to have on, but I promise we'll have someone equally as awesome as Pete. So stay tuned. And there's a mailing list. I'll put a link in the YouTube to it, but you can sign up and get notified about these things too. So thanks again for tuning in.
Cool. Thanks, guys.